Friday, January 20. From Testimonies for the Church, Volume 4, page 474, we read, "If all the tithes of our people flowed into the treasury of the Lord as they should, such blessings would be received that gifts and offerings for sacred purposes would be multiplied tenfold, and thus the channel between God and man would be kept open." End of quote. This is an amazing statement. If we all were faithful tithers, God would bless us with funds to increase our offerings 1,000%. And from the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald, December 17, 1901, in the 3rd chapter of Malachi is found the contract God has made with man. Here the Lord specifies the part he will act in bestowing his great gifts on those who will make a faithful return to him in tithes and offerings. End of quote. And from Testimonies to the Church, Volume 6, page 384. All should remember that God's claims upon us underlie every other claim. He gives to us bountifully, and the contract which he has made with man is that 1/10 of his possessions shall be returned to God. The Lord graciously entrusts to his stewards his treasures, but of the 10th he says, "This is mine," just in proportion as God has given his property to man, so man is to return to God a faithful tithe of all his substance. This distinct arrangement was made by Jesus Christ himself. End of quote. And that brings us to our 3 discussion questions for this week. 1. Dwell more on this idea that the practice of tithing did not originate in ancient Israel. How does this fact help us understand the perpetuity of this obligation on our part before God? 2. In class, discuss the question posed at the end of Monday's study. Think of what would happen if people decided to send their tithes somewhere else. What would happen to our church? Would we even have a church? What's wrong with the attitude that says, well, my tithe is so small in contrast to everything else, it doesn't matter? What if everyone thought like that? And 3, share with others what you have learned and experienced from giving tithe. What can you teach others about the practice? And now it's time for our mission story for this week, read by my niece Sibylla, who, like me, is also a volunteer. Thank you, Sibylla.
Sabbath Test in Malawi by Sharon Nolovu. A college in Malawi created consternation among Seventh-day Adventist students by scheduling final exams on the 7th-day Sabbath. Lucy was distressed. She and other Adventist students at the state-owned Karonga Teachers Training College had received scholarships to become teachers, but now their future seemed uncertain. The Adventist students gathered to discuss their dilemma. The year was 2006. Malawi was facing a food shortage that had prompted the cash-strapped government to ask state colleges to reduce the number of days that students were on campus. As a result, Lucy's college had moved up final exams previously scheduled for Monday and Tuesday to Saturday. The Adventists decided to ask the college to reconsider the day of the exams, and several went to the director's office. Their appeal was rejected. Worsening matters, other students began to mock them over their beliefs. Lucy watched in dismay as classmate after classmate bowed to the pressure and agreed to take the exams on Sabbath. But she and 3 others stood firm. They would honour the Lord of the Sabbath. They prayed and went to the director's office to appeal for a second time. At the office, Lucy felt shamed and insulted. She was reminded that she was privileged to have a state scholarship and told to study for the sake of her children, whom she was raising after her husband's recent death. The humiliation did not change Lucy's mind. She believed God would help. The second appeal was rejected. Lucy and her 3 classmates kept on praying, and they asked the district pastor to pray. The pastor spoke with the president of the Adventist Church in Malawi, who in turn asked state authorities to intercede. Adventists face Sabbath exams across Malawi. Abruptly, the college rescinded its decision and returned the exams to their old schedule. The sudden change showed confusion on campus, but all the students and faculty knew one thing: The prayers of 4 faithful Adventists had been answered in a powerful way. God intervened, said Lucy Narenda, who passed the exams and became a teacher. He has promised that he will never forsake his own. Lucy loves to claim God's promises in Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, he is the one who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you.
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful. And here is a disclaimer. Contents of these lessons are not intended to be financial advice, but is general commentary based on biblical principles. The reader is encouraged to seek competent professional advice which will suit their particular personal situation.